Hi everybody, this is Mike Oppenheim, and you are listening to Coffin Talk, Interviews with the Living, a weekly podcast that explores how our views on death affect the way we live our life. This week, our guest is Roxanne Chaput. She is a globally recognized luminary, inspirer, celestial guide, and generational earth shaman. She's the creator of the Illumination Retreat and the Oracle of the Divine Golden Order. Her purpose is to lead beautiful souls to effectively illuminate their soul's luxuriance, and we are honored to have her on the show. How are you doing, Roxanne?
I'm amazing. How are you, Mike?
Very good. We talked a little bit before the show, and I have 2 little kids day, but I love them, so it's awesome. We are always excited to interview someone, and especially someone who has done so much and also has a different angle to offer on our general metaphysical subjects. So thank you for coming on the show. The first question we ask every guest is, how old are you? Where did you grow up? And what generation, if any, do you consider yourself a member of?
Yeah, so I am 39, but 29 for the 11th time. And I was born and raised in Colorado Springs, Colorado, but I also was raised in Canada as well. So yeah, a lot of exciting things. I don't know that I would categorize myself in a certain generation because I'm going with the youth of my soul, but yeah. I would probably be considered a millennial.
Got it. No, that's cool. I just turned 43, so we're in a similar age range. But Colorado Springs, that has 3 very different populations living there. I don't think I've really spent much time there, but I've definitely driven through. Growing up there, were you experiencing the military side and the religious side and the others, or how was that for you?
Yeah, it was more the military side. My dad was in the Air Force, the Canadian Air Force, but he was stationed in the U.S. at NORAD. Wow. So very much military concept of living, but off base. So we had our own home in a residential area. So I got a little bit of a mixture of both worlds. Not so much. I mean, there was a little bit of religious practice in terms of Catholicism and Christianity, I think, just around in our neighborhood. But nothing that was preached towards us or anything like that of that nature.
That's cool. So are you a dual citizen of Canada and America, or?
Yeah, I'm a dual citizen. Yeah.
That's
one
awesome.
Of those fun.
And which province were you living in Canada?
In Ontario. I'm still living and residing in Ontario.
Oh,
now.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Are you in Toronto or outside?
Yeah, I'm about 3.5 to 4 hours north of Toronto, more in the country. I love quietness too.
No, I mean, it must be so beautiful and peaceful where you are, which is kind of an interesting segue into, I read a lot of the things you do, and I think it'll be in print for people to look at and read, but it sounds like a lot of cool words, but it's hard for people to parse. So in general, when you first meet people, how do you describe yourself?
Yeah, I always just say that I'm in the wellness industry just because if I start going into everything, they're like, what is that? What do you do? Or a lot of vocation around energy movement and things like that, where they seem to resonate with a little bit further. But most people that know about me or around me or surround me pretty much know that I'm a conscious leader. I mean, it's all in the body of work. So if someone didn't come across it and just came across in the physical path, it's more of I'm part of the wellness industry.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We can and things like that.
And did you ever take courses or have a guide in learning and evolving into that industry, or are you self-driven?
A lot of it was self-driven, and then a lot of it has been mentorship. So I am part of an indigenous culture here that is called, so it's a native culture, and we're part of the Métis tribal community. So the generational aspect of the shamanism. So for most people that may not know what shamanism is, hundreds and thousands of years ago, shamans have been around for 300,000 years plus. And those were considered the medical doctors, the energy doctors, the spirit doctors, the herbalists of their tribal communities throughout the world. So that's where shamanism comes from. So I come from an incredible indigenous line of tribal communities, and it's called the Métis tribal community. So a lot of the wisdom has come from the elders, and a lot of the teachings are of the good red road. And that's where a lot of the shamanism comes from. It's an initiation to become a shaman. It's not just something that you can proclaim or start facilitating. It's very intricate in terms of the process of the pathway.
That's really cool to hear. So that kind of makes sense with your last name having a French, because I guess is that the French Canadian influence up there and like in that area?
Yeah, exactly. So my dad was mainly French, but they did have native line. But my mother's side is very much Métis.
Wow.
So yes, yeah.
That's really cool. How did that work, like growing up with your identity process? Like, were you proud when you first learned this? Were you like curious, or was it just like something that you took for granted?
I was always proud of our Indigenous lineage. The only thing that was like a little bit of apprehensiveness was because of the way that the Canadian culture looked down upon the Indigenous culture, which should never have been. It should always been a look toward, just because of the connections and the spiritual traditions that they do have. So there was so much history that's happened, within Canada, within the French Revolution, that really have impacted people's perceptions and perspectives on the Indigenous culture, and isn't fitting, right? So there was a lot of fear to pronounce yourself as Métis or as the Indigenous culture, because there was so much repercussion then. So I was raised in an era where they were raised, where there was a lot of abrasiveness and a lot of apprehension to be who you were in terms of your genetic disposition.
Yeah, wow, that makes so much sense to me, and especially like I said, we're of a similar age because I grew up in like outside Berkeley, California, and so we were like ahead of the curve, and I'm using like giant air quotes because it's not something I'm like proud of or I think we were like significant for, but they were just pushing like Native American respect on us at a younger age, and so I remember like going east in my country and not seeing that, and like I mean, obviously now as an adult, the absolute tragedies that occurred like all over this hemisphere. I mean, not just America or Canada. It's shocking. So it's lovely to talk to someone who's from it and of it and who can like speak with pride about it. And so it's like, I don't know, it's just very special to me because I think the world is kind of like shifting, but we're losing sight of certain things. And so in that movement, how do you feel about like the ancientness of the shamanisms of like 300,000 years versus like technology, modernism, and like where we're headed? Like, do you think that both can remain intact as we go into this next era?
I do. So I will speak to more of the traditional aspects. The traditional aspects spoke to the multidimensional being, where the modern aspects do not speak to the multidimensional being. When you work with medical doctors, and I've worked in healthcare for almost 20 years, you don't have the component of the spiritual self. There's a disregard of the soul self. There's a disregard of the metaphysical self, right? Or the emotional body, even in its entirety. The main principal focus is mainly physical and mental. And the mental has just come to light in the last maybe 10 years, where there's been a rise in a mental health pandemic, and that's what brought it to light. But before then, the treatment plans were so barbaric, were so not right for the soul, where it created a lot of soul loss. So there's a lot of the tradition of the spiritual rites, the ceremonies that hold true to this day. There's a reason why it remained for so many years, for a multitude of time, and is still present in today's like earthly plane, right? We still see tribal communities in the South Americas and the North Americas that are still practicing these rites and these rituals and these ceremonies today, because there's viability to it. The viability is that you're addressing the soul self. You're not just, when we're doing a rites of passage, depending on what the rites of passage is or the milestone that the person is navigating through, it's not discrediting an aspect of their growth and their rebirthing process, where a lot of what happens in modern, science and the medical field, which is beautiful because we've learned so much. Science has brought us so much in our wisdom of understanding the body a lot more in the physical context of the physical body. But there's still a lot to understand about ourselves. We still don't fully understand our physical body and how it functions, and every aspect of how the body and its capacity that it has within itself. So there's still a lot of research to do. And what I see in the future is that there's going to be a spiritual connection, and there's going to be a physical, there's going to be the tradition and the modern that's going to weave together. And it's just how it's going to weave together. Because when I look at medical doctors that I practice with, and I see, right now in Western medicine, and I see all these psychiatrists and psychologists and neuropsychologists that are looking at holistic approaches, because they're seeing that their clients aren't healing and they aren't getting to a place of betterment without the medication. They're understanding that there's way more than just the physical mind or, the physical body.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that was such a good answer, and I have so many follow-up questions from so many parts of it. That was really, really cool to hear. Thank you. That was. I hope my audience appreciated that as much as I do. When you mentioned, I'm just going to kind of go in order. When you mentioned the earthly plane, I tremendously respect that phrasing. I think that's like a great way to talk about this, like the third dimension, if you will. I have, like I said, I have two small children. One's 5 months old, and the other's about to be 3. Watching them gain human Earth consciousness, I've noticed that they lose like a different type of consciousness. And I know there's no evidence for this, and no one's going to convince me, but I am convinced. And so I'm curious, like, do we come here to adjust to the earthly plane, or do we come here to learn to not be of? And if, obviously, it's an opinion question. Or do you think we come here to like not be of the earthly plane?
So what I come to understand in my channeling from the Divine Golden Order and what that is, I mean, we can express a little bit further into that, but there's been walk-in consciousness that have happened throughout my life. And what I've come to gather and from, a lot of other conscious leaders that are very well renowned, have had similar experiences. We come here to the earthly plane to understand a part of our multidimensional self, right? We come here to learn an aspect of ourselves and to experience a part of that multidimensional self, either to bring awareness, either to bring healing. And it's all about the mastery of self, right? So it doesn't matter what the experience is on the earth. There's still a mastery that is being, in the present moment of understanding the soul contracts and the soul lessons that we've come here to experience. We came here to be physical. We came here to the physical plane to have the physical dimension, to understand that aspect of the multidimensional self. So depending what we're contracted to do, that's why we've come here. It's important as we're human, as we're here experiencing Earth, that we are and honor our humanness, right? It's not about, honoring our soul self and discrediting or discarding our human self. That's not the point. That's aside from the point. We're here to experience in all of our multidimensional self in harmony and in alignment, not in discombobulation and separation.
Wow, that's really cool. That's very helpful. Yeah, I think it would be a good moment for you to define the Oracle of the Divine Golden Order, because I think if it's going to come up, it would be good for our guests to have it in like that order. So go ahead and however you want to describe it.
Yeah, so the Divine Golden Order, so about, I would say, quite a few years ago, I had an incredible apparition happen where it was a walking consciousness, where the consciousness walked directly into my body. And what happens when that happens is that you access another level of the consciousness. So a lot of the belief systems and the traditions, and, it could be from the spirit world, it could be coming from the angelic lineages, the creator itself. There's a lot of, ideas, or it's an activation of consciousness within your own body. But what happened was I was in my kitchen and I was getting ready to retire for the night. And there was this in my kitchen and in my sink, there was this massive window. And this beautiful, beautiful bright light came, and it was massive, like a massive angel, but it was all light. It was all texture of light, and its wings expanded exponentially. It was just massive, like it was overtaking. And my whole body was like, not in a state of shock, but in a state of like, I couldn't move my body. I was just witnessing what was happening. And the telepathy of the information was that, they were presenting that they were safe, and that, they were presenting themselves as a certain angel, as a certain archangel. And then they flew directly into my heart and into my crown and made me the angel of light. And ever since then, the level of consciousness and awareness that has been coming through has just been direct channeling from the Divine Golden Order. And the Divine Golden Order is the connection from, so we believe in the archangels. So a lot of people refer to as the angels, the archangels. But then there's the seraphim. And the seraphim is God's angels. It's the angels that sit directly beside God and protect God and or creator consciousness, whatever that might be for someone. That's the angels that are aligned directly to the creator's consciousness. And that's what I've been channeling, is creator consciousness and the seraphim consciousness.
That's beautiful and awesome to hear. And I ask every guest this who is of a similar confidence that you have and that I share, in that, like, there's way more to this existence than what the textbooks in a typical science class in a typical Western, course is going to teach you. how do you deal with for me, this is my wording, overwhelming, obvious like fact that most people that are around us don't see this, want to acknowledge it or believe in it, and will even go out of their way to try to dismiss people like you who want to carry such a positive message to people?
Yeah, you know what? The beautiful thing is I've learned from, very early ages since I was a little girl is my job and my mission here is not to explain to anyone. It's not to convince anyone. It's not to change someone's perspective. What I believe is embodying who I am. And by embodying who I am and living in peace and living in happiness and fulfillment and understanding that all of my bodies are within the multidimensional self, are in alignment and harmony, that is what brings about change. It's about being the change. It's never about saying the change. It's never about stating the change. It's about being that change. And I mean, we want to discredit things we don't believe in because it causes fear, because we think that we were wrong about an aspect of life. But just like you said, when you're a small child and you've come here to experience Earth, the level of purity of consciousness of divine light and unconditional love, that's all that a baby exudes because they're in the soul innocent form of their creational process until they start gaining human consciousness. And that human consciousness is about creating that harmony within itself so that they can maintain all levels of consciousness so that they can grow in harmony. So when we think about that, our multidimensional self doesn't exist, or we think that energy doesn't exist, we're falsely mistaken, because even in science, if you believe in scientific measure, if you believe in quantum science, if you believe in any religious structure, every religious structure says we have a soul. Every scientific measure that has been out there is indicating that we do have a soul. Science is just now catching up to spirituality. So to say that we don't have a soul self and we don't have those levels of consciousness and we can't heal ourselves when we have a pineal gland and we have all of these centers of intelligence that are within us, then we're greatly mistaken and we've been misled greatly. And it's not to say that we have to believe certain aspects, but all the evidence is there saying that, yes, we do. We are multidimensional. So there's no denying that. And now if we're made of energy and we're electromagnetic, it's been proven in science and every religious structure that energy cannot be created, nor can it be destroyed. Mm-hmm. So that means that our energy and our soul self needs to shift into another transmutation, to another transition, because it can never die. It can never be destroyed.
That's awesome. And I guess the $1 million question for you, which again, you can answer with as much or as little confidence as you want. I love your take and the way you explain things. So that's why I'm asking these questions. I don't ask everyone this. I agree about the energy, especially just like even in traditional terms of like an electron has to move up or down by releasing energy. So the pivotal question we ask on the podcast is, what do you think happens when you die? Is the energy transformed always in, like, is it associated with our consciousness, or is the energy associated with the part of us that isn't consciousness?
Hey everyone, if you're a fan of the show, please head over to MikeyOp.com and click the subscribe button. It's the best way to support us, and it's free. That's MikeyOpp.com. Thanks.
So our soul self is consciousness, right? Our soul memory. So in science, it has been proven that we have a triple helix within our DNA strand. So that DNA strand, so we're not just a two singular DNA strand. We have 3 DNA strands. And that third DNA strand is called our triple helix. And that triple helix is where it holds our soul memory. So what I believe is when we transition, because I cycle pump a lot of people that, have passed or are still stuck within this metrics of the world and don't know that they've passed, when we bring them through to the veil so that they can go through their transitional and their healing process, the soul is light, right? We are made of light. We are soul light. That's what it is. We move at the speed of light when we become into our soul form. It is light energy, but that light energy holds consciousness. Right? There is levels of consciousness, of soul consciousness that happen within the soul body. So I believe that when we pass from a body, what I've witnessed and what I've, in mediumship and through stewardship of bringing those back into their, their rightful place of the reincarnation process, is that you witness that there's this beautiful alleviation of understanding and understanding that they're going through the healing. When you go into the soul body, if you've ever done a very deep meditation by, an amazing facilitator, When I bring people to a death and dying ceremony so that they can understand the origins of where their energy has come from and the pathways that they will go through in reincarnation, it is the most powerful experience because once you go into the soul body, there's no stress, there's no worry. It's not the same type of emotional body that happens when we transition through. So when we're in the soul body, we are light and we are love, and it's unconditional and it's overpowering. A lot of people, they go into tears and they don't want to come back into the body because of how beautiful it feels.
Yeah, this is this is like leading exactly where I wanted to go in a conversation today of all days, because I've been having a very emotional like last week, and it's not like me, but it feels like it's gonna be like me, and I'll explain it a little bit more, and then I'll get to my question. Basically, I feel like the more I'm softening, which is not a product of aging necessarily in my case, it usually is, but in my case, it has more to do with like how I started looking at happiness and what makes me happy in life, and just kind of the gradual de-evolution of the hedonistic treadmill on the way up to that, and then ever since. So as I get more emotional, life feels harder, but it's also easier. Does that gel with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happens when you become more conscious and aware of the emotional body is that you've also come here to express every single emotion that you have as a human. So to be in peace and to be in serenity and to be in fulfillment and to be in happiness is not to not ever feel your emotions of densities of the heavier emotions, right? So that's really important. And when we come to a higher level of sensitivity, that means that our empathy and that our compassion has also heightened, and which brings us more into the soul body of the divine essence of what we are here for, right? Love for all, we are all as one, right? So when we think about the sensitivity is that we are so desensitized throughout the entirety of our life to not care about others. That's not our problem. That's not this. That's not that. Like if it doesn't impact you, it doesn't impact anything. But that's not reality, right? When it impacts one, it impacts everybody. So there's so much human disconnection that happens because so many people are disconnected from their emotions and they're so disconnected from their soul that when the remembrance starts to come back, it's a journey of remembrance. It's the deconstruction of the construction that happened throughout this lifetime. So that deconstruction of coming back to the remembrance of your divine pure self. Remember as a child how easy it was to cry, to feel anger, to feel upset, to feel disappointment. All of those things were very easily felt, easily expressed, and easily forgotten.
Wow, that was a great answer. That gelled so well with everything I've been feeling. And it's interesting because I'm trying to stay positive about what you just said, specifically the heavy emotions. It's just hard for me to face them because they have no source. Like I don't have like an intellectual explanation for them. It's more that I'm just like feeling my feelings for the first time, I would say, or at least actually no, to say what you said, since I was a child. And then I'm also raising children, and I'm starting to feel overwhelmed by how much pressure I feel to socialize them to the society that I expect them to live in versus the society I wish they would live in. Do you have any advice for people like me?
Yeah, so I think too, and I really want to bring this too. So emotional body expression is never out of nowhere. It's always rooted within the cellular complex. So the cellular complex is our energy, our outer field of energy. Everything is rooted within the energy field. It's never physically in the body or mentally in the mind or emotionally in the emotions or in the heart space. It always stems from the energy field.
Okay.
And it's rooted there and it radiates into these certain aspects. So when I look at this, it's very much there's a rootedness. So where the emotional expression is coming from is what happens, especially for young men and for young girls, is that we're told our whole life that we're not able to express our emotional body, right? And if we're to express our emotional body, it has to look in a certain capacity. And there's no such thing as suppression. A lot of people say it's suppression. I don't believe in that. I believe that it's pressurization. And what happens with that pressurization of emotions that happen within the body, eventually they need to be expressed. And a lot of the times what that comes out as is anger, frustration, anxiety, depression, things that are overbearing or anger, like massive anger. So when we're able to express the emotional body, it's like it's like this bottle has been shooken and there's so much pressure, and now you're starting to feel all of the pressure starting to release itself slowly at a time.
Wow. Yeah, that really gels with me. That resonates very well. When I look at like the state of Earth right now versus the state of Earth when I came of like age to have like enough perspective to judge the same state of Earth, I feel like we've shifted globally, not just in America and Canada and Western nations, in a what I would say less spiritual direction. And yet I also feel like what you said earlier on the interview, that we are headed towards this great spiritual scientific reconciliation moment. Do you feel like these events are preordained, or do you feel like a lot of us who are currently here have the ability to really like help that happen sooner than later?
So this is what I believe, and I believe that we all have, everyone has their own sacred purpose, and some sacred purpose are here to help shift the elevation of consciousness that are happening on the earth. And I know a lot of people have explained this as like the new earth or through the 4D and things like that, but that just means that it's a new level of conscious awareness that is happening throughout the earth. Mm-hmm. So when we think about the shift that's going to happen, what we're raised in is we're raised in an era where there's instant gratification and we want change tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And that's not necessarily what it is. We've all came here to be change agents, those that are assigned as light workers and those that are working within levels of consciousness within the body are here to help shift these perspectives. Because when you start living in your full consciousness, in your full awareness, and in your spiritual embodiment, and you're living in peace and joy and happiness and fulfillment, no matter of the external factors that are happening around you, that right there, when people witness that, they're like, how can I attain that? Because what people are really seeking, what humanity is really seeking, is peace and freedom. Mm-hmm. Freedom, a lot of the time, is connected to financial freedom. And it doesn't mean that that's wrong. It just means that's not the freedom that they're seeking, right? There's mm-hmm. an aspect of that financial freedom that will bring the abundance, but it's the freedom of being able to be their full embodied self is what they're looking to have inner peace, to have true happiness. We are taught from day one that happiness is outside of ourselves and that it's not within ourselves. We never see a child saying, I need a man or I need a woman to complete me or to be happy. They are naturally happy and fulfilled and at peace because they're embodying who they are. And that's where the joy, the curiosity, the excitement, all of those incredible emotions are within those spectrums because of the innocence.
Yeah, it is beyond tragic for me as a father to watch my first daughter learn to want instant gratification. It was like scary. It was very noticeable to me. It was obvious how it triggered, and now it's unstoppable and relentless. And it's like very difficult for me because I was raised by parents who meditate. So I was like taught to meditate at a very young age. And then I was ridiculed by every friend I ever had until suddenly the pendulum swung. And now like people are downloading apps to meditate.
Yeah, no. And to your point, like I do think that the world is shifting in its levels of consciousness. I don't think that 100% will ever get there, and I don't think that was ever the trajectory, especially in this lifespan. Mm-hmm. I do feel like we are on the trajectory. Like people are being more holistic. Like I went to an event the other day, and I had two MDs come to me asking for my consultation on something that we both know that most MDs would have never asked for that consultation because of the scientific perspective, right?
Yeah.
So people are opening up, and as we see the younger generations who are raised around conscious parents or aware parents, we're starting to see the shift in that as well, right? So the shift is going to be momentous, and it's going to be everlasting. We're not looking for an imminent shift. An imminent shift is going to create a greater impact, right? Mm-hmm. So it's very slow moving, and it's not to say that everyone is going to have levels of consciousness.
Yeah, so it's actually hilarious because I love irony, but the irony is that I'm a person who is sad when I see people obsessed with instant gratification, and yet my biggest wish is to be instantly gratified with consciousness raising with everyone. So that was definitely not lost on me as we talked for the last half an hour, and it was definitely intriguing. Do you have any advice for the burgeoning spiritual person who is not willing to put money out there or like risk their reputation at work by like going to a closet to meditate and stuff like that? Like, what would be your suggestion to someone who just wants to like dip their toe in the water?
I think dipping a toe in the water is never needing something external from us. So I never tell people to go seek something or go to yoga or go to this, because that's not listening to your own intuitive knowingness.
Mm-hmm.
When we listen to our own intuitive knowingness, that's how we actually affect healing within the body, and not just healing, the physical body and emotional body or mental body, but also healing our belief systems, right? Of actually accessing things on our own accord, where we can actually have the sensations so that we understand the gratitude and the gravity of what we are actually within our multidimensional self. So, I think the breath is so powerful. Just in our own simple breath, it stabilizes our pH levels. It literally resets our whole nervous system. It literally allows the oxygen and healing light to be able to come into the body and to help facilitate healing in the body. So learning how to be comfortable within your own breath. Many of us only breathe to survive. We don't breathe to heal our bodies or to love our bodies. We heal to survive. So learning how to master the breath, practicing with yourself, seeing what feels right in alignment for you. What is your body guiding you to do? What is your mind guiding you to do? What is your soul guiding you to do? Those are the important key factors. Learning yourself before inviting everybody else to tell you about yourself is what I strongly believe in.
Wow, that was such a great answer, Roxanne. You're an incredible person. I run these interviews at a certain length just because that's what the audience tends to enjoy, but I could ask you like 14 more hours of questions, so I really appreciate your time. I do, however, always give my guests an opportunity to just kind of have the last word on the show, so is there anything you want our audience to know about? There will be notes for how to reach you and all that, but I mean more of like, is there a message you want to give them?
Absolutely. I think the most important thing that has always, sat on my heart is just to believe in yourself, right? And to trust yourself and where you're being guided. Your intuition is never wrong, right? Your intuition is never wrong. And that's also proven in science, right? So your intuition is 99.9% accurate, where the cognitive mind is 98%. So, when we listen to our intuition and we follow our guidance and we follow our inner guidance and we follow our soul guidance, that's where it leads us to the path of where we're meant to discover. And it doesn't mean that you have to serve at a global level. It doesn't mean that you have to tell everybody about, your journey to yourself and the journey to remembrance to yourself.
Yeah.
It's just about believing in yourself and believing that, you have such magic and such beauty within you. And you are light. You don't need anything outside of you. You don't need, this or that. You need yourself, right? And your soul isn't seeking outside of you. It's seeking to reconnect with you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Roxanne. You're a beautiful, awesome human being. I really appreciate everything you said. I love your attitude. Hopefully people who can use your help will contact you, and even if they don't, I'm sure just listening to you will help a lot of people, including myself today. You've definitely given me perspective. So thank you so much. And to everyone listening at home, as always, if you want to support our show, just head over to mikeyop.com. Thank you again, Roxanne. Thank you again to everyone listening. My name is Mike Oppenheim. You have been listening to Coffin Talk, and we will see you soon.